We'll do the Maimorim Melukit. This is a Chelik Dalet. This is the 31st Maimer. The Maimer Teshmach Rעים Ahuvim. The Rebbe said this Maimer in Shabbos Parshas Tetzei, which was the 13th of Elul in the year Tavshim Aleph. Of course, the 13th of Elul is the anniversary of the marriage of the Friedike Rebbe to the Rebbetzin, and the Rebbe Rashab gave a mimer at that wedding, and the mimer was Samach to Samach. This mimer is based on that mimer. Later on, as it says in the note, they published this mimer in a special booklet for Yud Gimel Elul Tavshim Zayin, and that was in honor of the 13th of Elul, in which there was 90 years to the marriage of the Friedike Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, which he got married in Tov Reish Nun Zayin, and that year that they published it, it was Tov Shin Mem Zayin. The date in the publication is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Teitzei, Yud El Hey Tehei Zush Nas Mashiach, which is Tov Shin Mem Zayin. So in this Maimer, the Rebbe discusses the bracha we say in the Sheva bracha, Samach Teshmach Ra'im Ahuvim. So B'chlal, we know when we talk about in Sephiris, we talk about Yud K, that's the Chochma and Bina, that's called Av Ve'em. That's a inyan of connection, an inyan of Yichud of Chochma Bina. That's the Yud K of the Shem Havaya, and then we have Vav K, the lower, that's the level of Zo and Nukva, that's the Midos and Malchus. Zo and Nukva, that's also, there is a Yichud of Zo and Nukva. And of course, the marriage is compared to Zo and Nukva, to the Chosen and the Kala, the groom and the bride, is connected to the idea of the Yichud of Zov and Nukva. Here we talk about Samach to Samach. You should rejoice. We're asking Hashem to bring down the level of Simcha. As the Rebbe will explain, we're talking about a Simcha Atzmis, a very high level of essence of Simcha. Not a Simcha which is connected begolui into something begolui, but in a Etzem Simcha, because in order to achieve the bligvul, which is necessary for the hamshacha to have the heilada, as we will continue to see, has to do with the level of bringing down all the ways from atzmus. The Rebbe will explain what the ra'im ha'ahuvim, who the ra'im ha'ahuvim are exactly, the chochma ubina, and how we're mamshir from keser and even higher, as we will continue to learning in the Maimer. Let's look the Maimer inside now. B'sayayte d'shmaya. Shabbos Parshas Tetzei Yud Gimel Elul Hey Tavshin Mem Aleph. So we start Samach to Samach. This is a prayer in the Sheva Brachas that we're asking for Hashem. Rejoice, you shall rejoice. Re'im ha'ahuvim, these beloved friends. Simply, it's talking about these beloved friends. We're talking about the Chosen and the Kala, who are Re'im Ahuvim. And we're asking Hashem to rejoice them. And we're saying, Kishamechach Yitzirecha Began Eden Mikadem. Just as your Creator, the Eibishter, rejoiced in Gan Eden from the beginning, Adam and Chava, the Eibishter was the only one who was there. He rejoiced them, and as the Rebbe will explain later on in the Maimer, that was from the level of Chafetz Chesed, not the Avodah. It came Milmailo, but just like there was the Simcha of Yitzircha, and it was a Simcha Atzmis that the Eibishter was Mamshich. Began Eden Mikadem, we're asking the Eibishter, praying to the Eibishter, that Samach to Samach, he should also rejoice the Re'im Ahuvim, these beloved friends, the Chosen and the Kala. So this is the verse in the bracha that we say. So the Rebbe Rashab in that mimer, which this mimer is based upon, the Rebbe Rashab gave on Yud Gimel Elul during the wedding. It was on a Friday during the wedding of the Friedrich Rebbe. So Mevuer B'Dibur HaMaschil Zeh, that is explained in this mimer that begins with this opening. Shenemar, that mimer was said by the Rebbe Rashab Ve'ez Chasunas Kvit Kidushas Meirichom Admur during the wedding of my father-in-law, the Rebbe, that was B'Yom Vov Erev Shabbos Kodesh. It was on Friday, the eve of the Holy Shabbos, Yud Gimel Elul Tafreish Nun Zayin, the 13th of Elul in the year Tafreish Nun Zayin. So over there we say the Maimer explains that who is the Reim HaAhuvim. According to the Kabbalah, the Reim HaAhuvim Heim Bechinas Chochma Ubina. That is the levels of Chochma Ubina. They are called Chochma Ubina are called the Reim. They're called friends that are beloved Ahuvim. Where do we see this? Because in the Zohar we say Shenikroim Train the Rein the Loy Misparshi. They are called, they are like two friends that don't separate, they always go together. So Chochma and Bina are basically two parts of the same thing. You have an idea, you have the level of Chochma. Articulated, that idea is Bina, goes together. In the Sfiras, Chochma and Bina are always together. So they are called the Reim. They are the Reim HaAhuvim. And we'll see soon what is the idea of Reim HaAhuvim, not just the Reim, but we'll see soon. But Vahaba Kosher, what we're asking in this prayer is Samach Tishmach Reim HaAhuvim. The Eibishter should bring down joy in these beloved Reim into Chochmah Bina. Eventually, if the Eibishter brings down Simcha to Reim Ahuvim, that filters down to Zo Malchus, and it filters down to the Chosun Kal over here in this world. But we're asking Samach to Samach, the Reim Ahuvim, he shetumshach Simcha b'chos Chochma Bina, that there should be Simcha drawn down into the Chochma Bina. So, according to this, that the taich is to bring Simcha to Chochma Bina, the Rebbe asks that L'chaire, in the Maimer, the Rebbe asks, why does we need Simcha to be drawn down there? Doesn't Bina itself is called Simcha, Ein Abonim Smecha? When you understand an idea, that is something that brings you joy. The fact that you understand the idea. So why do we need to bring down Simcha to Bina when Bina seems to have joy on its own? V'tzorich lahavin. Harei Bina hi mekoim hasimcha. Bina is the place of Simcha. K'moshe Kosu, the pasuk says, Eim habonim smecha. The mother of the children is rejoicing. As mentioned before, that Chochma and Bina are considered like a father and mother. Bina is the mother, and Chochma is the father. Chochma is like when a father and mother, the father gives the seed, and then the child develops in the womb of the mother for the 9 months. So the seed of an idea is Chochma, and the birth of the idea, it takes place in Bina, which articulates and expands on that spark, that seed that comes from the father, and that gives birth to the level of midos, that gives the emotions a birth to them, and that's a level of Bina is a level of simcha. V'yadua, and this is known that when we say Eim Habonim Smecha, the Eim Habonim Koyi Al Bina, that this is a reference to Bina. Shehi Ha'eim Hameledes Es Hamidas, because Bina is the mother that gives birth to the Midas, to the emotion. And this is not just because the Pasuk says that Bina Eim Habonim is Smecha. This is actually something we can understand, knowing that Bina is the idea of articulating and taking an idea and articulating. When you grasp something, understand it, that brings you joy, that brings you simcha. As we also see it vividly in practical terms, the kisha odom masig besichloi ezu hasoga, when a person grasps in his mind a an understanding, he grasps something, yesh loy simcha mizeh, so he has joy from this. So that's why bina aim habonim is smecha has simcha. Why do we need to bring down simcha? Now we're bringing down simcha to both zayt, to chokhmah and bina, reim, to the both of them. And also, the Rebbe asks, by Chochmah, also, even though Chochmah, there's no Simcha yet, because in the idea, when there's just a spark, there is no understanding, so there is no Simcha there, but there is Tainug, and Tainug is even higher than Simcha. So why would we need to be Mamshich Simcha to Tainug, to Chochmah, when Chochmah is the idea of Tainug, which is higher than Simcha? V'gam b'Chochmah, and also in Chochmah she'ein shayich bo Simcha, v'dir Simcha does not fit, doesn't belong. Simcha is not in Chochmah. Why? Because Chochmah is the spark, is the seed. Ki Simcha hi mitzad hagilui davke. Simcha comes because of revelation. The Chochmah is k'may barak hamavrik, and Chochmah is like a lightning that gives a bolt of lightning. So it's just a quick uh, idea, but you don't have a grasp and understanding. It's not articulated. And he lemaila megilu, and this is higher than revelation. The person doesn't really understand it. So maybe we need simcha in chokhmah, but no, because hare b'chokhmah meir gili ha'oineg. In chokhmah, there shines the revelation of oineg, of tainug, the light. Okemoi, like we find that tzohavu ponov shel rababo, the Gemara says in Yerushalmi, in Shabbos, that the face of Rababo lit up, it shined. Shemotzo Tosefta Chadato. He found a new Tosefta. So that was a spark that brought about that level of shine, which is a level of Oineg. The Tzehivas Haponim Hu Megilui HaOineg. The shine of the face is because of the revelation of Oineg. So while Chochmah doesn't have Simcha, because Simcha comes from Gilui, revelation, and Chochmah, it's not revealed yet, but Simcha, but Chochmah has the level of Tainuk, and the Yodua, the Oineg Hulamayla Misimcha. So Oineg is even higher, is above Simcha. So Bina already has Simcha. Eim Habonim Smecha. Chochmah is the level of Tainug, which is higher than Simcha. Tzohavu Ponav Shel Rababo. That's Matzot Shafta, the Metzia, the finding, the Chochmah, that spark, that brings a level of Tainug. So Chochmah, Bina has Simcha. Chochmah is higher than Simcha is Tainug. Umahi Habakosha Samach Tsamach Ra'im Ha'ahuvim. So what is the request that the Eibush should give Simcha to the Ra'im Ha'ahuvim? Me'achar shebelav hochi yesh simcha bebina. Since in any event there is simcha in the level of bina, so bina already has simcha. V'alachas kama v'kamo b'chokma sheyesh bo eineg shalamayl misimcha. And how much more so in chokma we don't understand. Why do we need simcha there? It has eineg. Eineg shalamayl misimcha is even higher than simcha. Why do we have to be mamshich simcha over there? As the Rebbe will explain later on in the Maimer, that there is a level which is a mugbal dika simcha and a mugbal dika oineg, a limited simcha, limited oineg. In order to really be mamshich all the inyonim, you need to bring a simcha atzmis, which is higher, which is the prayer, as the Rebbe will explain later on. But the Rebbe first asks another question. The Pashut Pshat of Re'im Ahuvim, the Maimer articulates and elaborates over there that it's talking about the Chochmo Bina, which is the level of Yud K of the Shem Havaya. But the Pashut Pshat of Re'im Ahuvim, we're talking about a Chosun Kala. Chosun Kala are compared not to Chochmo Bina, but rather to Zoh and Malchus, the Midas and Malchus. So, what's the connection between here we're saying Samach to Samach Rei Mahuvim Chochmo Bina with the simple meaning that it is Rei Mahuvim would go on Zoh and Malchus. V'gam tzorich lahavin, also we need to understand. Harei Reim ha'ahuvim b'pashtus, simply Reim ha'ahuvim, koi al choson v'kalo, that goes on a choson akalo. V'yadua, and we know the choson v'kalo, hem zo v'nukva, that choson kala is not chochma ubina, but rather it's zo and malchus. There is the two yichud. The yichud of choson v'kala is considered the yichud of zo and malchus, not the yichud of chochma ubina. So what is the connection of Mao Akesher de Pirush Zeh? So what's the connection of this interpretation now that we're learning that it goes on Chochma Bina? Shareim ha'ahuvim koi al-chosim v'kalo zov v'nukva, the Pashut Pshat. That the Reim ha'ahuvim goes on chosim v'kalo in Pirush Hanal with the above mentioned interpretation, the Reim ha'ahuvim em Chochma Bina, that the Reim ha'ahuvim are Chochma Bina. So how does this tie to the simple meaning that we're talking about the chosim kala, which would be more yichud of Zav and Nukva, as the Rebbe will explain later on, that through the infusion of Samach to Samach, extra Simcha, Simcha Atzmis in the Chochma Ubina, eventually is for the purpose of Zav and Nukva, for the yichud Zav and Nukva, in order to get the Heiloda that comes down later on, which is the Gilu of Atzmus, as the Rebbe continues to explain in the Maimer. So now the Rebbe brings down that it says here Re'im Ahuvim. So before we said that the Re'im is Aveim, Chochma Ubina, or it can also mean Zovanukha, but in the Maimer here we're talking about Samach to Samach Re'im Ahuvim. So, but the Re'im is Trein Re'in Lo Misparshin. He brought from the Zohar, that Kuni Zohar, that this is two friends, Chochma Ubina, that are always together. That's what's Re'im. But what is the idea of Ahuvim, those beloved Re'im? So the Rebbe brings down that the idea of Ahuvim is actually the level of Doidim. Ahuvim is the same gematria, the numerical value is of Doidim. Doidim is known that it's Zoh and Malchus. Zun is considered Doidim, this beloved, the beloved of Doidim. So basically, when the pasuk says Re'im, it's Chochma Ubina. Ahuvim is Zoh Malchus. How do we connect the two? Let's see inside. Yeshloimar, the Yuvan Zeh Hakesher the Shnei Perushim, the tie of these two interpretations of that Reim Ahuvim goes on Chochma and Bina with a simple pshat that Chochma and Bina, that Reim Ahuvim goes on the Chos Kala, which is Zoh and Malchus. Al pi ma shekosu b'sefer Emes LeYaakov, based on what is written in the Sefer Emes LeYaakov, Huva b'Maimer Hanal. That's brought down in the above Maimer, in the Maimer of Samach to Samach. That the Ahuvim begematria doidim. And Ahuvim is the same numerical value as doidim. So basically, Ahuvim is doidim. But doidim veheim zov and nukva. These doidim, these beloved, is referencing zov and nukva. That's zov and malchus. Ukiyadua, as it's known, shereim, friends, heim chochma ubina. That is samach to samach, reim, the reim, train reim, the lemis parsha. So when we want to talk about the level of chochma ubina, we call them reim. But when we want to call zov and nukva the yichud of zov and malchus, then we call it doidim. The doidim heim zov and nukva. So how do we explain reim ha'ahuvim? Reim is chochma ubina. Ahuvim is doidim, which is zov and nukva. So what is the meaning over here? Over here, u'mashekosu reim ha'ahuvim. The tevas ahuvim, he behemshech v'toyar shel reim. The ahuvim is the beloved. That's a description. What kind of reim they are, that they reim ahuvim, shekoyi kenala chochma ubina. We're talking about the reim. Our chochma ubina, we're saying the reim are ahuvim, but the ahuvim is zav and nukva. So what is it? How does the beloved reim apply to the reim, to chochma ubina? The Rebbe is going to explain that we can explain it in the two extremes. On one level, we can say that in Chochma Ubina, there is also Zov and Nukva in Chochma Ubina, because before Zov and Nukva separate, are born out of Chochma Ubina, they are first in Chochma Ubina. So Reim HaAhuvim is talking about the level of Zov and Nukva as they are still in Reim. So the Reim HaAhuvim, the Zav and Nukva in the level of Reim before they've left and become really doidim outside of Chochma Bina. On the other extreme, we can say that we're actually talking about the level of Zav and Nukva, the level of doidim, of the Ahuvim, but the reason they're called Reim, because within Zav and Nukva, there is still the leftover and the comparison to Chochma Bina, and that's why it's called Reim Ahuvim. Let's look inside. So the pshat over here is u'mashekosu v'reim ahuvim. The tevas ahuvim hi behemshach v'toyer shel reim. That ahuvim is a continuation and a description of reim. Shekoyi kenala chochma bina, that goes on chochma bina. So it's the reim that ahuvim. Yesh levayer b'shnei fanim. We can explain this in two ways. Number one, aleph. Api hayadua be'oifen lidas hamidas zov and nukva mahamoichin chochma bina. Based on what we know, how are the emotions created, given birth from the moich from chochma bina? So shebitchila heim klulim b'hamoich. In the beginning, they are part of the moich, which means the midos are part of the moiche before they go out to become midas fully. They're midas shebemoichen. They are in the midas, in the moiche. There's midas. And then later on, they come out revealed to be actual midas. So based on this, we can say that the reim ha'ahuvim koi alzo v'nukva. So the reim, those who are beloved, the ahuvim is doidim, which is of a nukva. So that is koi alzo v'nukva ahuvim, because k'moi shem klulim b'chochma bina reim, as they are included in the chochma bina, which are the reim. So it's the ahuvim, the doidim, the way they are part of the chochma bina, part of the reim. That's is reim ahuvim. When we would just talk I ahuvim doidim stam, that's already when they get out begilui. Mashenkin ahuvim stam, not reim ahuvim, just ahuvim. Koyal zoven nukva commissionim shochem begilui. That goes as zoven nukva as they have extended openly. That ahuvim begematria doidim, just ahuvim, which is the gematria of doidim, which is the level of Zoh and Nukva. That's when they actually came out. That's when they're doidim. Here, they're not doidim yet. They're still reim ha'ahuvim. They are still included and part of the reim. So that is the meaning of reim ha'ahuvim. And this means that when do they become doidim, which is Zoh and Nukva, that's later on. And that's why it doesn't say, even though ahuvim is begematria doidim, which is of a nukva, it doesn't say reim hadoidim. It only says reim ahuvim because it's the gematria of doidim. It doesn't say reim samach sam reim hadoidim, because doidim itself is already the midos, as they have already separated from the moichin. But here it's only the gematria, meaning that it still has to translate and the numerical value later on. That's what I've explained now. Also understand the idea that the idea of Zov Nukva, which is the level of doidim, merumas, it's hidden. That Zov Nukva is hidden in the gematria, in the numerical value, the ahuvim. It's only that in ahuvim there's a gematria of doidim. Doidim is Zov Nukva, but in ahuvim it doesn't say it's the gematria of doidim. The ahuvim gematria doidim. So when we say something is a numerical value, that means it's not the thing itself. It's not open. You have to has the same value, but it's a level interpreted goes down a step. The gematria moira al miyut ha'oir v'hachayis miyut achar miyut. Gematria points to the diminishing of the light and the energy, one miyut diminishing after another diminishing, which means you have to translate it in numbers, but it's not, it's the same numbers, but it's not the same thing. Why is that? So now we understand, because we are talking ahuvim is not doidim yet. Ahuvim is still in the level of moichim. Doidim, it's when it's zov and nukva, when it's open. But here we're talking reim ha'ahuvim, that they're still ahuvim, they're still in moichin, so they're not doidim yet. They're just ahuvim. They're only the gematria of doidim. Reim ha'ahuvim, because that extended from the midos, which is in the moichin, which is the reim ha'ahuvim. That's the way midos are included in the moichin. Lemidos shebelev, for it to come out from the moichin to the midos, which is ahuvim begematria doidim, to come to the level of doidim. Actually, they come at tzimtzumim. There's many tzimtzumim. This is very well understood. The Rebbe says, according to this interpretation, that Ahuvim is the level of the midos as they are still in the moichin. We understand now why doidim is a gematria, because there's still a distance between the real doidim, which is the expression when Zoh Malchus are outside of Bina, to the way the doidim are inside. There is just a gematria of doidim. It's the level of ahuvim, and needs to be nimshach, has to go through tzimtzumim. In this interpretation, it fits in very well, as opposed to in the second interpretation, we don't have this specific gematria. So the Rebbe says it over here. Al pizeh, we understand very well why it's only gematria. But in the second interpretation, it's the other way around. That we're talking reim ahuvim while we're talking about chochma ubina, but talking about chochma ubina the way they are in midas. Ubeis, what's the second interpretation? The Mekiv on Shah Midas have told us Hamoichin, since the Midas are the derivatives of the Moichin. So that means the Chochma Bina Heim Av V'Eim. Chochma and Bina are a father and a mother. V'Zov V'Nukva Heim Ben Ubas. So a son comes basically from Chochma, a daughter comes basically from Bina. So that's the father and mother, and Zov and Nukva are the son and the daughter. Okay, the Isa Kabbalah, like we see in the Kabbalah, Sha'ava Aim, in the name of Hashem, you have Yud K, Vav K. So Yud K represents Chochma Bina. Ava Aim, Hem Yud K, Chochma Bina. That's the name of Hashem, Yud K. And then you have Uben Ubas, Hem Vav K, that's Zov and Nukva. So since Zov and Nukva are the son and daughter of Avaim, so they are compared to the Moichin. Even after they extended and they were revealed. The fact that the Ben and the Bas, or Zov and Nukva, the fact that they come into a separate entity, they are a Ben and a Bas. Since they come from the Avaim, they're still compared to the Avaim. Matter of fact, the Rebbe brings down that when you inherit, the son takes the place of the father, which means it's not you transfer from the father to the son, he inherits him, but the son actually becomes like the father. So it means there's a comparison. And also, when there's no sons, then the girls inherit. It also becomes in the place of the mother. But the father and mother is just the way it works with in the Kabbalah, that Chochma Bina give birth, Yud K give birth, Chochma Bina, to Vav K. So the Vav K, even while it's Zov and Nukva, it is similar to the Yud K. They are compared to the Moichin. Gam la'achre shenimshechu v'nizgalu. Even after they have extended and been revealed into Vav K, into Zov and Nukva, they are still compared to Yud K, to the Chochma Bina. Ki ha'av moirish libenoi. Because a father inherits, doesn't give. Inheritance is a whole other level of connection. To the extent that the inheritor is not getting it from, he takes the place of the Moirish, meaning, so there is a very deep connection to the son. Even after he's become a son, he is still in the place of the father. What are we going to argue? But a girl doesn't inherit. When there is boys, there's no inheritance. But the same thing is true, because if there is no boys, it would be the same thing true for a daughter, that she would take the place of the Moirish, not only get it, if she inherits, if there's no son there. But that's depending the halacha, when there is a son or there is no son, there's only a girl, but the proti is to go, but specifically, and this is all the Moirish, the father, but here we want to connect the father and the daughter, the mother and the daughter, and the father and the son. The protis, habenu b'mokim ha'ab, son takes the place of the father, babasi b'mokim ha'aim, and the daughter takes the place of the mother, k'mashikosu ki imo kibito, as the pasuk says, like the mother, like the daughter, and therefore there is a deep connection between the Vavke, the Zov and Nukva, the Ben and Bas to the Avaim, even after they became Bihis Galus. The Alpizeh Shloimer, so this is the second interpretation. Shegam la'achrei shenimshechu v'nizgalu, even after Chochmo Bina have given birth to the to the Zov, to the Ben and Bas, and they extended, they were revealed. Nikroim heim b'shneim reim ha'ahuvim. They're also still called the reim ha'ahuvim. They're also the Chochma Bina. Ukenal the reim ha'ahuvim bepashtus koyel chosav v'kala. Like we said before, reim ha'ahuvim simply goes on the chosav v'kala, which is zov and nukva shebegilu. So that's the revealed zov and nukva, not the way they are in the level of Aveim. In Pashtus, what is Reim Ahuvim? The way the Pashtum Shat we make the bracha is the Chosav Kala, is the way they are here, the way they are already Nizgala, Nimshach Nizgala. So the Reim Ahuvim isn't talking about the Chochma Bina, it's really talking about these Galus, is talking about Zov and Nukva. But we're still calling them Reim. So how come the Reim is Chochma Bina? Mekivon shegam oz la'achram shachosav izgaluso. Since even then, after they've been extended and they have been revealed, heim doimim lechochma bina, they're still compared to chochma bina, ki imo kibito and haben b'makom, so they're still compared. So we are calling it reim, even though we're talking about the Isgalus now. We're talking about the revealed part. We're talking about Chosav Kala. We're talking about the Vavke. But still, we call them Reim because of their comparison to the Chochma Ubina, and that's why we call them Reim Ha'ov. So basically, the Rebbe explained the connection between the two Perushim, that the Reim Ahuvim goes on Chochma Bina, and the Perush HaPoshu that the Reim Ahuvim goes on Zo V'Nukva. He explained it basically, actually, that the Reim Ahuvim itself is has the combination, as the Rebbe explained it two ways. That the Reim Ahuvim, it's either the way Zo V'Nukva are in Chochma Bina, or it's the way that Chochma Bina are in the Zo V'Nukva. So we have a very clear connection between these two Perushim of Chosan Kala, Zov and Nukva, and Chochma Ubina, Avein. But the Rebbe says now that actually in Simcha that we're trying to accomplish with the bracha is also a connection between these two Perushim. Because through providing extra Simcha in Chochma Ubina, we get extra Simcha also in the Chosan V'Kala in Zohar Malchus. That's what we can say, Gimel. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe adds here to the Pirush of before, Shahakesher, the Shnei HaPirushim B'Reim HaAhuvim, the connection between these interpretations, Reim HaAhuvim. The Pirush HaIkri Hu Shereim HaAhuvim Koyal Chochma Bina. The main pshat is, as the Maimer learns there, that Reim HaAhuvim refers to Chochma Bina. Kimavur Baruch Haba Maimer, as explained at length in the Maimer. Elo Sheyesh b'zeh oid pirush, there is an additional explanation. Shekoi gam al zov v'nukva. It also goes on zov v'nukva. So how do we connect these two pirushim? Not only that there is a connection there, but also we connect them with the idea to rejoice. That by rejoicing, hugam be'inyan samech tesamach, samach tesamach, also in the idea of rejoice, you should rejoice hulu. It's really one and the same. When we're asking the Ebrish to be sameach, chokhmah bina, to give chokhmah bina a level of simcha. So even though they have a level of simcha already, chokhmah bina, it is so to be mamshich it further to zo malchus. This that we're requesting that the simcha should extend in chokhmah bina, which is the pirush ikli b'reim haovim, the main pirush in reim haovim, to bring to chokhmah bina. Even though besides this they have simcha v'einig, is in order to extend in them a higher level of simcha than the simcha they have on their own. There's a simcha that they have on their own. In order to bring down to them, there is a simcha that they have on their own. But here, we're asking for a higher simcha atzmi, that Rebbe will explain. And what's the purpose of that? Well, what's the reason why we need to give them mamshich them an additional simcha? Because when you give them an extra level of simcha, they're able to bring down the revelation in Zov Nikva, which is Pirush Hasheni B'Reim HaAhuvim, the second Pirush Reim HaAhuvim, to bring the Zov Nikva. So it's really connected, because even when we're bringing it down to Chochmah Bina, that is in order, so that it should be Simcha, the revelation in Zov Nukva, which is the second Pirush in Reim HaAhuvim. So that's the connection also in the contents. The Rebbe will go on now to explain the different levels of Simcha and how, while there is one Simcha, there still could be a much higher level of Simcha. And what is Mamshich, the idea of Simcha B'Likvul, that's Tafke, a Simcha Atzmis, which is not tied and connected to anything specific, as the Rebbe will continue to explain in the Maimon.